My name is India O'Shea, and my mom is Sámi and Scottish, and my dad is French and Anishinaabe.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your family upbringing.
I grew up in and around Bois Fort, Minnesota, kind of in the lakes and woods of northern Anishinaabe. And I spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time in the Boundary Waters area, camping, fishing, hunting, and just being outdoors.
Okay, great. And let's talk a little bit about, in that, with your relationship to your culture. Tell me how that relates to the culture of being Nordic, your upbringing.
Yeah, so a lot of my upbringing made me feel very connected to my Nordic heritage because so many other Nordic people live in that area and so many other Sami people live in that area. And so there's a Nordic and Sami community in that space, and getting to spend time with people who lived in and came from, Finland and Norway, and who still were very connected to Sami culture and Sami tradition.
Okay, great. Can you tell me how your parents met?
Yeah, so my mom and dad met when my mom was 16. They were introduced by mutual friends, and they went on a date bowling. And my mom was kind of unsure if she liked him that much, but he sent her flowers to school the next day, and she was like, okay, well, I'll go on another date with him.
I love it. That's actually great. So tell me about some of the traditions that your family has maintained.
So my grandparents are all very into traditional handicraft. On my mom's side, wood carving and some of the like jewelry making and beading and things. And on my dad's side, beading and a lot of stuff to do with basketry and a lot of stuff to do with like tradition of being close to the land. So, getting a lot of our food and resources from like going out and getting it ourselves, not buying so much from the grocery store. I always tell people that I ate venison way more than I ate like hamburger meat growing up, and fish from the lakes and that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's talk about some values. What values were emphasized by your elders or your ancestors, your parents, anybody? Can you tell me about some of those?
I think one of the values that was most instilled in me growing up was like loyalty and responsibility. So loyalty and responsibility not only to your family, but your community, to where you live, and to everything around you, and kind of being accountable. So not only benefiting from those things, but also being responsible for giving back to them and supporting them the same way that they support you.
And you kind of already emphasized this, but we're going to kind of go back a little bit. A lot of that came from your parents. What has carried over for you into your adult life? Tell me about some of these values that have carried over for you that you learned from parents or other family members or community members.
So being apart from my family, I live in Washington now, but I grew up in Minnesota, so that's where my home community and my family all live. It's difficult to maintain the cultural connection when you're separated from everybody, and the community connection, especially when so many traditions and values are based in place, and I'm away from that place. So how I try to stay connected to my family is, making sure that I'm always checking in with them, seeing how they're doing, making time to talk with my little cousins on the phone, and out here being respectful of the land and the people whose land this is in the same way that I would do back home. And also learning about it because it's so different here. There's such different plants and animals than northern Minnesota.
Absolutely. All right, so, this is the big question. So tell me, what does it mean to be Nordic?
I think that being Nordic has a lot to do with working together, and it has a lot to do with, to me, the Nordic community is really based in like mutual respect, mutual trust, and not valuing some people over other people, but rather recognizing everybody's individual strengths and weaknesses and appreciating everyone for where that they are at.
Let's talk about openness.
I think that the value of openness is important because our communities are so reliant on each other. Everybody builds upon what others have to offer, and also welcoming people into our community is so important. I think that Nordic culture as a whole is very open. Nordic people are happy to, have people join in and support people who are kind of from other places or different. And I think that can be kind of shown in my family upbringing because, my family is, mixed Nordic culture and not Nordic culture. My great-grandma was actually adopted by two Sámi immigrants, and so they, were very open with bringing Indigenous woman into their home who was only 12 years old. And so that kind of story, just being willing to give what you have to other people.
Okay, let's talk about sustainability. Talk to me about sustainability.
Sure. Sustainability is something that I try to bring into every day of my life because it's really important to me that I am doing everything that I can to support the environment around me and the plant and animal relatives that are part of the community that I live in. And so sustainability is really high on my list of what I want to accomplish. And so day to day, what that kind of looks like for me is making use of everything that I can, and making sure that I am thinking a lot before I decide to purchase something or get something new. Some things that I do, like with my artwork, is I repurpose things and make them into jewelry. I love doing beadwork, and so like deer antler, deer died in our yard, and I used its antlers and made jewelry with that. I tanned its hide, and then brought all of the other parts out for the eagles and stuff that live on the island. And so just making sure that everything is being honored in the way that it should.
And you touched on this a lot of what you just said, but why is sustainability so important?
Sustainability is so important because we only have one planet. We only have so much of each environment, and if we don't take care of it, like it takes care of us, we're going to, damage it and lose it.
That's a great answer. Okay, let's talk about social justice. Let's talk about the value of social justice. Talk to me about that.
Social justice is something that is really important to me because the experiences that I have as a white person that is also Indigenous, really that experience has really affected how I view society. My younger sister has a lot deeper skin tone than I do, and so I have kind of seen the direct impacts of what, colorism and racism can do, because, we have the same parents, but we've been treated very differently in a lot of situations. And so it's really important to me that we uplift people's voices who are often not brought to, the center of a lot of issues because of historic discrimination and things like that.
That's a good one too. All right, let's talk about innovation. So tell me about innovation.
I think when people think about Indigenous cultures like the Sámi or Anishinaabe, a lot of times people think about the past and not today, even though we're all still around. And I think people think of tradition as being so rooted in the past and incompatible with technology and advancements and things like that, but it's really not that way. If these innovations are positive, like a net positive for our communities, a net positive for our environment, and for everyone, then of course, we want to incorporate those innovations into culture and into our traditions going forward.
Great. Let's circle back to openness one more time.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit again, what is openness and why is it so important?
Openness is really important because everyone should feel like their voice is being heard, like they have input into the conversation, and I think it's really important to be inclusive of everyone that you can be inclusive to, and I think that the part of openness that I see come in Nordic cultures is the fact that there is not a lot of hierarchy in Nordic culture. It's everybody kind of says their piece and everybody wants to come to a mutual agreement instead of kind of like the typical how many votes. We all want everybody to have to be happy with the outcome.
What do you think people don't know about the Nordic culture in general?
I think people don't know how diverse Nordic culture is. I think that a lot of people assume that, Norway and Finland and Sweden and Iceland, that we all have really similar cultures and that it's all kind of basically the same. And a lot of people don't even know that Sami people exist, let alone that there's multiple different types of Sami people. So I think that there's kind of this idea that it's very homogenous, but it's not.
That's a good answer. So what would you have a person and they know nothing about Nordic culture. What would you tell them? If you had to tell them in a nutshell, real quickly, about the Nordic culture, what would you say?
I think I would say that Nordic culture is very subdued. People aren't usually very out there or extroverted. It's all pretty laid back. But everyone is very kind, very accepting, and very funny.
Okay, great. That's great. Allison, do you have any off the top of your foot that you want to circle back to? Because we can keep going on.
Would you mind talking a little bit, I guess, about the story? I just want to circle back to that because it was really interesting about your grandmother who was adopted.
Yeah.
Could you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Great. So yeah, go ahead and please tell us a little bit more about your grandmother.
Yeah, so on my mom's side, that's where I'm, have the genetic, I guess you would say, Sámi background. But on my dad's side, my great-grandmother, my my dad's mom. She was born to mixed French and Indigenous parents, and her mother unfortunately died when she was about 12 during childbirth, giving birth to her younger sibling. And her father couldn't really, at that time, raise her and her now 4, siblings alone. At that time, he had to be at work, and there wasn't a lot of childcare options. Being a single dad wasn't really a thing. And so while it wasn't a official legal process, they were really close friends with a northern Sámi couple that lived in their community, the Sviams, and the two of them took my great-grandmother and her siblings in and pretty much raised them for the rest of their childhood. Their dad coming to visit and stuff as he could and spend time with them, but from 12 onwards, she really grew up on their farm. And so while she, did get time with her mother and got to spend some time in Anishinaabe culture, she did get a lot of the North Sámi culture as well growing up because, they raised her and they weren't able to have kids themselves. So we kind of have 2 pairs of great-great-grandparents. We consider Martin and Olga, also our family for always because of what they did for them.
That's great. That's great. Any other kind of fun family stories like that that you might have, or?
I could go into more detail about kind of where in Sápmi my mom's family is from, if that's interesting.
And also, too, you mentioned that some people don't even know that the Sámi people exist.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you describe Sámi people and Sámi culture to someone who didn't know?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's a great one, yes.
So on my mom's side, my mom's mom has South Sámi and Kola Sámi heritage, and her family came from the Raibaki and Rovaniemi areas, and so that connection has been very strong. My grandma is very, very proud of being Sámi and proud of being Nordic, and that's something that she always talked about, and something my great-grandma always talked about as well on that side. And they had close friends that, moved later, and so we got to be around people who had, thick Scandinavian accents and still did a lot of traditional crafts and stuff. One thing, it's one of my favorite memories growing up is my great-grandma and her best friend Edie, who moved from Finland well into her 30s, I think, sitting with my younger sister who was just a little baby, probably 4, and them showing her how to do the weaving, band weaving.
Tell me about the Sámi culture.
I think that Sámi culture is different from other parts of Nordic culture because Sámi people have a lot closer relationship with the land, the plants, and kind of more traditional life ways. But also Sámi people live in cities and, are very modern as well. But I think one of the key things about Sámi culture to me is the feeling of closeness to your family and how tight-knit everybody is, and also just very much the willingness to have fun and kind of bring joy into everything, even if it's a chore or cleaning fish or whatever, making it, something that's enjoyable and that's, part of day-to-day family activity life.
Yeah, and in general, Nordic people seem pretty happy.
Yeah.
Right? Speak to that a little bit. Why do you think Nordic people are so happy?
I think that the Nordic countries tend to have those, higher ratings for happiness and stuff, and Nordic culture brings people a lot of joy because of just the general feeling of mutual respect, of the want to just enjoy each other's company and to be comfortable and to not put a lot of pressure on anything, and if things go wrong, that's okay.
And this is kind of a little bit of a repeat to what you just said, but what are some of your favorite things about being Nordic? Why are you're proud to be Nordic? Tell me why.
I'm proud to be Nordic because I think that there's something really special about the way that people in our communities treat each other, and I also think that there's just a special something that I can't really describe that comes with coming from a culture that spends 9 months out of the year 3 feet deep in snow. I think that there's, adaptations culturally that come from that are just really special and different.
Is there anything we haven't talked about regarding your background or being Nordic? Anything that you can think of that I didn't ask you that you think would be really good to share? Or that you'd like to share? You don't have to think, anything.
I guess one thing that I'd like to share is that I love how I have been able to connect with the Sámi and Nordic community so quickly, and everybody's been so welcoming from, me moving up to Washington. I haven't been here hardly a year, and, I'm on the CRV board and doing stuff with the Nordic, and just kind of the open arms that everybody kind of invited me in upon coming here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Allison?
Maybe just talk, she mentioned she's on the Pacific Sami CRV board. Just talk a little bit, I know you talked about this in your interview with me earlier, but how you became involved with the board and what the CRV does.
Sure.
Okay, great.
So I became involved with the Pacific Sami CRV because I had been online and I was looking for resources for learning Sami language. There's not a whole lot available in the United States, and especially not something that's translated into English. And so when I was browsing around for that, I came across a chat room thing, and I, looked in it, and one of the other board members was in that chat room, and I mentioned that I lived in Portland, and she said, "Oh, you have to join our board, please apply, please apply." And so it was just a couple weeks before the open vote for adding new board members, and I thought, it's during COVID, I don't have a whole lot going on. I've got free time, so I applied to join the board, and I got selected as one of the new board members, and I wasn't too sure what to expect because I'd been on a board of a museum before, but not an Indigenous nonprofit organization. And when I had our first meeting, I got introduced to everybody. Everybody was so kind. The outgoing board members were letting me know, just reach out to them if I need any help, if I need any support from them. And when I joined, I was so happy to meet everybody and to be able to kind of share my culture with this group of people, but also to do all of these events and programs and stuff for the wider Sami community. Actually, not just in the Pacific Northwest, because we've been doing a lot of online programming as well. So we, reach people from all over Turtle Island up into British Columbia. I was saying, I've loved being able to do bringing a lot of the programming to the broader Sami community, not just in the Pacific Northwest, but also all of Turtle Island, because we've had a lot of virtual events, online classes, so that it's really accessible to everyone that is part of the diaspora, out here and not in Sámi.
Okay, great. All right, Allison, what do you think?
Great,
Do you feel good?
I feel good. I think we have
Okay.
really great.
Anything you want to go back over? I mean, I think you did a great job,
Yeah.
Indy. You did wonderful. Oh, you know what? There is one thing that I did not. We talked a lot about the values, how they resonate with you in your life. But one thing we didn't talk about is why are these values universal? They are universal, really, to all cultures, or they should be.
Right.
Right? Can you speak to me a little bit about why they're universal values?
These values are all so important and so universal because they're things that every person should be striving towards, taking care of the planet, taking care of each other, moving forward in the best ways that we can.
Fantastic answer. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think we're great.